Notification. The content from When Justice Goes AWOL podcast is for informational purposes only. Views expressed by the host and guests are their own and do not reflect those of our sponsors or employers. While efforts are made to ensure accuracy in content, information provided may not always be complete or current. Listeners rely on information at their own risk. Warning. This episode contains depictions of violent crime and other subjects of sensitive nature. Viewer discretion is advised. Hello, everybody, and thank you so much for joining me again today. My name is Nicole Charcoti, and this is When Justice Goes AWOL. So last week we looked at the trial portion of the case of Nick Hokema and his unaliver Donathan Kang Lee. In 2024, something else happened. Another person from the 201st EMIB, that's Expeditionary Military Intelligence Brigade, was also charged with very similar crimes from the same unit and with the same commander. Carlos R. Estrada. From what I could gather from what little information I could find about him, especially since this case wrapped up, was he is a cybersecurity-based professional, and he was a sergeant for the 201st EMIB. He has experience in representing himself with different organizations through the military. But this year, he was also found guilty and sentenced to 35 years for assaulting not one, not two, but 3 children. He essayed 3 children. 2 of the children were actually family members. Another family friend was also victimized by him. Allegations were reported to CID, and CID starts to investigate, and the way they approach it is, okay, we're going to have you surrender your electronics and all your devices and just stay here until you go to trial. Just stay here. Sound familiar? Well, Estrada decides that he doesn't want to stick around for any of this, and he goes AWOL. He leaves or deserts without the intention of coming back, and he disobeyed a lawful order. And you would think that once they apprehended him all the way in Wyoming, that those charges would have stuck, because you want to hold your soldiers accountable, especially if you say reform is happening, but there's no evidence to back it up. So if you look at the actual charges for Estrada, you will see that there are a lot that actually ended up being dismissed. A lot of SA cases were actually dismissed on behalf of Estrada, and he wasn't even charged for going AWOL or deserting with intent to remain away. How does that work? In exchange for a plea deal, he gets 35 years, but some of his victims never receive that justice. How is that fair? If that doesn't cater to someone just because they're in the military, what else is that? Prosecutor Stephen Harrell of the 6th Circuit Army Office of Special Trial Counsel even went so far as to say, "The courage of the victims in this case cannot be understated. The only reason justice was served was because of their bravery. What little justice they got was because of their bravery. Why not honor them and hold this monster accountable to the max that you can?" All the charges that were dismissed were the ones he pled not guilty to anyway. Negotiating with him. The number of charges actually transfers into another slide because there were so many. But the majority of them were dismissed in order to get 3 charges held against him in only 35 years. I find it interesting because Lee's case, he was facing 64. So why a lesser amount now? The charge of going AWOL and intent to remain away was also dismissed. There's a study at Yale University where it talks about commanding officers and how they can inadvertently or actually deliberately condone military SA violence in order to increase unit cohesiveness. There's a code of silence people follow. But the thing that I don't understand the most is when they talk about unit camaraderie and how pointing out military SA violence is like ratting out your comrade. I wouldn't want to serve next to those men anyway. I would want to know exactly who they were. If we don't know who these people are, how exactly do we know who to protect them from? This was a family friend and a father, a military member who should have been a protector instead of a predator. But here we are. But yeah, the overall code of silence seems to be the predominating factor of ratting out your fellow soldiers for when they commit military SV. If your peers are upset with you because someone was thrown in the brig for SA or child abuse, you need new peers. I think this is a good example of a wolf in sheep's clothing. How to dodge people who may be able to actively monitor them and call them out on their bad behavior. The only thing that we are enabling is further victimization of children, of women, of men in the military, and otherwise. And then we get back to the commanding officer of the 201st. Back then, it was David C. Hazelton. Now, Hazelton is the commander of the 201st, and this charge came up when he was still commander of the 201st with Estrada. After everything that happened with Nick's case, after all the red flags that were waving in the air, after the mother of his victims pleaded with CID to lock him up, nothing was done on behalf of their concerns. And then Nick was unalived. Now you have the same situation, the same manner of crime, the same manner of victim from the same unit, and you didn't think it was necessary to put him in pretrial confinement before he went AWOL. You thought taking his devices would deter him from fleeing. The lack of accountability in both of these cases is astonishing because it happened from the same unit. You think that they would have learned something with Nick's case. You think that they would work to actively prevent a situation like that from happening again, but they're making the same mistakes. And then claiming that reform is happening. They'll tell you what you want in the articles with Michelle McCaskill telling you, oh, we caught the bad guy. Oh, the victims are so brave. And we could do more to hold this monster accountable, but we got other things to worry about. Our hands are tied. Policy, procedure. I just find it interesting that not more is being done to protect us. Not more is being done to protect children. Children on base. This was a military trial. And you say that you can hold them more accountable than you can in civilian court? You say the punishments are harsher? Judging by the amount of time he was given and all the charges that were quote-unquote dismissed, I'd say not enough. And then it goes back into this whole unpopularity contest with your commanding officer and your subordinate situation. As a commanding officer, you are to have authority over everyone under you. You don't see those red flags in behavior that pop up because you are not actively observing them. You learn nothing. The least restrictive enforcement when it comes to pretrial confinement. The only thing that does is cater to the perpetrator. You have done nothing for the victims except call out their bravery. Then we have a problem. We are not prioritizing the right people. We are not prioritizing the right reform. We are not prioritizing change, safety, accountability. If I made that same mistake twice and somebody died because of it, I would lose my job. And I would feel sorry for the people that have to deal with that inefficiency and that kind of blanket statement that they have everything covered when they don't. You keep pushing that kind of authority through into higher positions. The same ineffectiveness gets pushed through the ranks. The same mistakes keep happening. Nothing is going to change out of that, regardless if you switch them to a different brigade. The same energy that we put in is the same energy that we will get. And right now, the energy I'm feeling from military justice and everyone trying to fit reform in and make people more accountable, it's only happening on paper. And the sad thing is, it's going to keep happening as long as we keep ineffective leaders in positions that they don't earn or deserve. And then there's the issue of Estrada's guilt. How guilt played a role in his sentencing. Because when he was initially questioned by CID agents about these allegations, he denied them all. And then it was chosen to surrender his electronics but order him to remain on base. Was he even being supervised? Was somebody actually charged with looking after him and making sure he did not leave base? Because that's only as effective as the integrity that the person you're giving the order to has. And I don't think a monster like him has any. But unfortunately, it's not just the commanding officers that are at fault in this case. These judges that handle these military cases have an obligation to deliver justice. Larry A. Babin was tasked to preside over this case, and I would have a few questions for him, like, why would you be willing to work or compromise so much with somebody who not only admitted to later doing this to children, but went AWOL with the intent to remain away? You didn't even hold him accountable on those charges. He might as well not even have went AWOL in the first place. And that nothing like that was reported into the news, you have to go to the court-martial website and look through all the court documents and all the charging documents and the plea agreement and everything on there. And the sad thing is you have to form your own conclusions because it's easy. It's easy to interview with CID and have them say, we got the bad guy, and don't look any more into this case than you already need to. A lot of the time, I think we have a responsibility to ourselves and especially others, vulnerable people, children, the elderly, animals, anybody who is disenfranchised and needs further help. We need that accountability within ourselves. I don't know how you could live with yourself after that. That's not strength. And that's not accountability. That's not leadership. It's laziness. Unfortunately, it seems the more authority you have, the more you stand to lose. So in order not to lose it, you will change the narrative or push words into it any way you can to make it look like you covered your bases, like you did your job, like you kept people safe. But unfortunately, that's not true in either of these cases. With Nick's case, with Jonathan Lee, with Carlos Estrada, why are we promoting the rights of predators over people? In the state of Washington, I've unfortunately also learned that catch and release policies are pretty popular around here. We had a guy fleeing the cops who used an automatic weapon to try and escape. But hey, that ankle monitor sure stopped him after his 10th arrest. A judgment was recently upheld that priests do not have to reveal child SA crimes during confession because it is a shared sacred space. What about the sacredness of children's safety? What about protecting the most vulnerable population in our society? What about ending the cycle of abuse for many children that are still trapped in it? It really is a wolf in sheep's clothing situation with a lot of these guys, a lot of these people. Estrada victimized these children, places where they should feel safe and taken care of, using the cover of a slumber party where children should be safe and happy and entertained instead of not fearful when the lights go out. Who's going to come in the room with them? And then again, maybe this doesn't affect any of you. Maybe some of you know exactly who your friends and family and acquaintances all are. They'd never do that to my kid. Oh, there's a slumber party. You can go. Have fun. Whatever. And then your kid gets home the next day, and they are never the same again. The light in their eyes isn't the same. Their smile doesn't reach as wide as it used to. The sad thing is that no matter what you do or who you hurt or even unalive yourself, you can never make what happened to them go away. I am asking people to think critically about what they want the future to look like for their children and the possible threats they would be up against if real reform does not actually take place. For every case of military SA that is reported, there are at least 2 more cases that are not. And that statistic, I'm sure, is very underreported. I have talked to so many people, military, ex-military, thinking about joining the military. We have real discussions about the challenges that many soldiers face because of the way things are. We talk about being able to support their families through all the benefits that are offered, but then we talk about, okay, what about when they're done with you? After you are done actively serving your country, after you are done breaking your body to protect the people that matter most, your family, and the people that make up your country, are you going to be able to get the benefits that you are due through the VA? I see so many people experiencing homelessness that are also veterans in this city. They sleep in doorways. They ask for food that you have left over if you go out to eat somewhere. They're trying to survive. We are neglecting the veterans that we already have to such a degree that I think it is a slap in the face and an insult to everyone who has served, that it won't take someone going AWOL and being reapprehended for them to finally admit to what they did. We won't have to waste resources. We wouldn't have to waste law enforcement capabilities to track down someone who never should have been allowed to leave. But that's what seems to keep happening. I appreciate you all joining me for this segment. I think it's important to follow up with cases that come out of military bases, especially when it's the same base with the same unit and the same charges. Next week, we will be taking a deeper dive into the case of Denise Smith, a security guard that was unalived by a ranger from JBLM. I will also be doing an interview where the family will get to discuss what her loss means to them and still means to them, and what they would like to see change. I'm Nicole Charcoti, and this is When Justice Goes AWOL. When Justice Goes AWOL podcast is not affiliated with the military.